So you are familiar with the website, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. And what goes on there, what I put up there, is anything prior to being published on Substack or published here on the podcast. Now, what you may not know if you haven't visited there is some of what ends up there does not end up on Substack, more so does not end up on the podcast. And so you realize that gives you a chance to hear so-called outtakes of what we do. Actually, programs that this program didn't make it. So the program that was scheduled to be on, as you're listening right now, I didn't like the way it came out, and so I decided to re-record it. In between the time between I decided to re-record it and what you're listening to right now as I'm recording it was the incident that happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where there had another school shooting, this time against a Catholic school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so it's obviously now I'm changing the whole program altogether. But I think it's a thing that we need to ask ourselves about why this is happening. Now, one of the things to understand, and every time a school shooting happens, there's always this question of maybe we need gun control. I practice the most effective form of gun control. I don't own a gun. I won't own a gun, even though I am a veteran. I've used them, obviously. I've trained in them. I don't own a gun. I won't. For the simple fact of my faith. I don't want to stand before the Lord at the end of my life and have to justify why I killed someone, took their life because they were stealing my TV. That's literally the reason why I do not own a gun. So I don't own a gun, period. I don't own any kind of a firearm. And there's a reason why, as I told you that, but I'm going back one on that too, because what's happening is now the legislature says we have to do gun control. We have to wait a minute. This is one of the problems of our society. Everything has to be solved through laws. However, if you truly understand what our faith teaches, if you truly lived what our faith teaches, we wouldn't need laws. That's my perspective. It's called Christian anarchy. No one ever asked me what my political party is, but the closest you'll ever hear is they'll say my political party is an oxymoron. There is no such party as the Christian Anarchist Party for obvious reasons, any more than there was any party called the Anarchist Party for obvious reasons. But I am a Christian anarchist. I believe that if we truly lived the Gospels, and we truly live what the Gospels taught and teach, then we wouldn't need laws. Because as it is written, the law is written on our hearts. But since we're not perfect, we do need laws. But right away, people are going to come together and say, well, we need laws now. We need to try. And they're going to see if they can pass some kind of anti-gun legislation. Okay. But you see, the problem there is we're relying too much on external authority. And we're relying too much. First of all, we're relying too much on the media, which we shouldn't be doing. I mean, the reason why people saying, well, the media today is everywhere. It's prolific. It is everywhere. And it's really, as Noam Chomsky teaches, it's really there not to inform you, but to form your way of thinking. And that's what they do. All of them. So Fox doesn't. Fox does it. CNN does it. MSNBC does it without question. They all do it. They all try to get you to think the way they want you to think. That's what the media does. They don't necessarily realize they're doing that, but that's what they're doing. So the media is going to step in and they're going to talk about gun control and firearms and everything else. And no one's going to talk about why is this happening, and maybe legislation is not the solution. Now, we're living in a society, of course, that has less of a belief in God. And one of the things that's part of our society, which I agree with, is not putting belief in God into our legislation. I absolutely believe in that. A lot of people want to say, well, we should mandate, this, that, and the other thing about our religion. Well, the problem is, whose religion you're going to mandate. If you mandate, we'll say, well, Christianity, it's obvious. Well, there are a lot of Christians that think Catholics are pagans. So which form of Christianity are you going to put in there? There are Catholics that believe that if you are not Catholic, you're going to hell. Which form of Christianity are you going to legislate? So no, you can't do that. But the Christianity wasn't designed to be legislated. It was designed to be lived on an individual level and bring that individual level to community. It's designed for communities of people who all live the faith. That's what it's designed for. Do you understand? Christianity is designed for this. And we've gotten away from Christianity. Why? Because people are saying, well, we don't have to believe in God anymore. If you've listened to the podcast enough, then you know that one of the things I teach is that atheism is flat earth thinking. Atheism is, I don't believe in God, I don't see God, therefore God does not exist. It's the same form of thinking is the world looks flat to me, therefore it must be flat. It's exactly the same form of thinking. But science will teach you that we have no way of knowing of all that exists is all that we can see or perceive. We have no way of knowing that. And that's the problem with atheism. Atheism is built on the idea that everything that exists is all that we can see. There was an interesting statement made a long time ago by the Rational Response Squad in a debate they had with Kirk Cameron on ABC. And they had said the laws of physics, okay, this is fine. I'm all for the laws of physics. The laws of physics, they apply on Earth as they do on Pluto. They said something like that. I probably don't have the wording anywhere near close to what they said, but that was the principle. Well, we don't know that. We really don't know that the laws of physics are the same. I mean, it makes sense. It certainly is something that we can extrapolate from what we know, but we have no proof that that is actually true, because the only way you can prove that is to do an experiment. And you can go on Pluto and you can say, oh, look at this. They work exactly the same. All right. Do you understand? But we don't know that for sure, because we can only know what we have proven to be true. And so when someone says God does not exist because we can't see him, that implies that the only thing that exists is what we can see. And that does not make sense. You understand? Because our faith teaches that there is a whole different reality that is among us and more that is not perceivable by us. And some of it is in the material world. We can teach that in science. You cannot see radio waves. You cannot see direct light, but you can see indirect light. We're actually designed to see indirect light, not direct light. You can't see radio waves. You can't see air. But if you go the extra step and say, well, is it true that there are things that are not made out of matter? And since they aren't made of matter, we can't see them. But if you're living in a society that says, no, all this stuff that is, all this faith stuff doesn't exist, and we don't have to believe in God anymore, so we can become our own gods, which is exactly what Friedrich Nietzsche taught when he taught that God does not exist, that God is dead, rather. It's this Nietzscheism, and we've seen where this leads. And part of the problem is we have allowed people, especially in our legislature, especially in our universities, even in our government, who are preaching something that is scientifically unprovable, that All that exists is what we can see and perceive, and if we can see or perceive it, it doesn't exist. There is nothing scientific about that statement. And what it goes on further with our understanding of faith is that the world is bigger than our ability to perceive it, but the laws of the world, which it means kind of like the physical laws, the laws of physics, the laws of biology, well, there's what we would call the spiritual laws are just as real as the laws of physics and the laws of everything else. And the spiritual laws are based on one simple fact. God exists and we are in his world, therefore we have to follow his teaching to live in his world. There you go. Now, how we understand that, and that begins with being people of prayer, absolutely essential. I always start there, okay? Whereas those who say that God doesn't exist, we can throw God out of everything, we don't need, now we have to make laws to run our life, are based on the idea that God does not exist. Therefore, we are the gods, and we have to make the rules because we're the gods. And then what is the fruit of all that? All kinds of a mess. War and school shootings and drug abuse and cartels and all of it, because it's all based on the idea we don't have to listen to God anymore. This is like Lord of the Flies at times, and that was exactly what Lord of the Flies is all about. Great book, wonderful book. It's all built on that same idea. Remember the words of William Golding. Man makes evil like bees make honey. And when you take God out of the picture, this is what happens. Doesn't mean I'm calling for God to be legislated into our culture. It means that we're called to live a culture rooted in God. That's important. It's called to be done on an individual level, and then that individual level is brought to community, so then it's lived on a communal level. But it begins with us saying, we will serve God today, and then working together to do that, and being humble enough to be able to listen to what the Lord is saying and acting on this. I'm going to be back on the other side of the break. In the meantime, remember, we are here every single Monday through Friday at program drops at midnight on your favorite podcast platform. We will be back right after this. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back, and I wanted to continue on this theme, but going a slightly different direction, and that is there'll be many calls for gun control. Now, I told you earlier my political affiliation. I am indeed an anarchist, so a Christian anarchist. So I don't get into legislation. I don't get into asking for it as a rule. I may get involved in helping to lobby people on it, but I really believe more in a sense of if people truly live the gospel, then you wouldn't need laws. I actually can also trace it back to Thomas Paine, the government that governs least governs best, and John Adams, who said that the Constitution was made for religious people. There was, what's his name? Alexis de Tocqueville said that one of the things that was important about the United States Constitution in the United States when he did his Democracy in America is that he considered the U.S. form of government will consider it like a tent, and the churches were the tent poles. You take away the churches, the whole thing collapses. Well, why? Because the churches are all about charity, people being charitable to each other. Now, granted, they're not perfect. There's a lot of flaws in that, and at that time and even today. But basically, the idea is that this is all an important understanding of what it means to be an American, that whole concept of charity towards one another. And in light of that, we go to another step. By the way, I should add that John Adams was a Protestant, and he set up a law in Massachusetts as part of the Massachusetts Constitution that children were to learn religion every week. I think it was Tuesday afternoon. They were supposed to learn religion. They did that. I don't know if they still do it, but they did it in Quincy, Massachusetts for probably close to 200 years. That Tuesday afternoon school was let out so that children could go to catechism class per se, and it had to be Protestant. That was John Adams. It had to be, don't be teaching that Catholic stuff. Well, we want to look at that in the fact that this is where I come from. So we want to believe in our faith. We want to believe in our teaching. And as part of this teaching, we want to believe the understanding that we're called to live our faith in such a way that it glorifies God. Well, now the question is, well, what do we do about guns? And you hear a lot of bishops and a lot of people calling for Congress to legislate in favor of gun control. Well, the bishops are not anarchists, as am I. So the bishops will always, lobby Congress. I disagree with that because I think instead they should be lobbying their own people, doing teachings on why the church disagrees with the use of guns. And just come from that perspective, and then let the lay people lobby Congress as they see fit. Don't let other people, don't let the bishops do it, because what the bishops are doing is they are enforcing their idea of good morality, and I'm not disagreeing with them on that, on the country. And in our country, we have people who consider, including in the church, especially in the traditionalist sections, who consider the Second Amendment virtually a sacred ritual. They believe the sacred Second Amendment is sacred. So when the bishops come in and say, no, we need gun control, people don't look at it as a way the bishops are trying to make the country safer. They're enforcing their Catholic values on us. And that's why the bishops, and then that makes our job difficult. One of these bishops, I think he eventually took it down. As a matter of fact, I've noticed he doesn't use X, so I think he was eventually told, get the heck off of X. Just after President Trump was elected the second time, he called him Hitler and misspelled Hitler. He called him Hitler. I said, well, that's going to make it really difficult for everyone in his diocese when he calls the President of the United States Hitler. That was stupid on his part. And, now you know why I get 5 letters of reprimand. That was stupid. He's not my bishop. Cardinal O'Malley would never do that. He would be more reserved, and I don't think Archbishop Richard Henning would do it. But this particular one is notorious for making stupid statements like that. And now, in fact, it seems like someone pulled him aside and said, here, do us all a favor, stop writing on X. But, and he, again, is calling for Congress to change the law and enforce gun control. And I look at this when he makes those statements, made those statements in the past, and I'm saying, does this man realize that he is literally in the business of teaching people how not to kill people? He is literally in the business of teaching people how not to kill people. That's his business, to follow the laws of God and to thou shalt not kill. Does he get this? And now he's writing to Congress. He's telling people Congress needs to change the law. No, you've got to teach the faith better. And you don't teach the faith by telling people it's a sin to own a gun or anything like that. You teach the faith by saying we're in the business of loving others, and therefore our greatest desire is to see people's lives change, and therefore, step out as prophetically as we can so that people will change. And one of the ways we can step out prophetically, as I do as a Catholic priest, is I refuse to own a gun. I will not own one. And the reason is because I do believe that for me, that is against everything I stand for and everything I believe in. Now, I know other priests disagree with me. I knew a priest who's no longer living right now. Well, he's no longer living right now. It doesn't. You could say that about Jesus. He's no longer living right now, but we expect him to be living in about 24 hours. But anyway, he's no longer living. But he was a federal agent, and he used to carry a gun everywhere he went as a priest. He used to, obviously, it was concealed carry. And I'm like, and we used to, you carrying a gun? And you go, yeah. And I would just look at that and saying, to me, that makes no sense whatsoever. But you're going to see these bishops call for gun control, and yeah, fine, if they want to do that. But I really think it's going to make our lives difficult, because there are going to be plenty of people who are going to tell the bishops to stay the heck away from the Second Amendment. And then we in the field, the laity and the priest, will have to deal with that. And it's like, get this, understand this. But what we can do is teach and preach and speak out, because here's the bottom line. You might have someone who is, a mess. They're involved in robberies and everything else, and you want to stop that at all possible cost, but you don't want to necessarily stop it by killing them. Because number one, in order to do that extrajudiciously, is you'd have to just fire the gun and kill them. You're going to live with that reality for the rest of your life. And you might say, well, I could care less. Well, no, you will at times of your life. That will affect you. It may not bother you, but it will affect you. And the other thing is, the best thing you can do is to work ways to change people's lives, and also do things to make people, to ensure that people don't end up causing trouble in the first place. Build solid families, and start really teaching and build good communities, and let people feel good when they go to church. Don't teach them that they're all going to hell and then send them home, but build a community and teach them the church the faith in a roundabout way, and build a community of love. That does a tremendous amount. And build a community of love in such a way that those who are outside of the community realize they'd like to build a community of love, and let them do it too. That's the way you change things. You think, and by the way, if you think that's off the wall, I was in the city that had the highest crime rate in the state, in Massachusetts at the time, and no longer does. It was, I loved being in the city. It's called Chelsea, Massachusetts. Nice little city. People would say to me, there was a very nice area that was a former naval hospital. And they would say, well, what kind of people live in Chelsea? And they were great people. I would say that. Well, yeah, anyone we know? Well, Donny Osmond. And what? Donny Osmond lived in Chelsea, Massachusetts, in a place called Admiral Hills. It's a bunch of condos. While he was doing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Raincoat, or whatever it's called, in Boston. Yeah, Donny Osmond. So I would say that. It's a wonderful city, but at the time it still had the highest crime rate in the state. And the chief of police told me, if you want to lower crime, the real thing to do is to build community. And when you build community, you lower crime, because people get to know each other. They get to care about each other. That lowers crime. That's why I don't get into the the building of law. You have to find another thing. So when you have the bishops turning around and saying, we've got to lobby Congress for gun control legislation, okay, let them do that. But God forbid they'd write a letter and say, we want coffee and donuts in every single parish in the United States, because that builds community. Frank Morano, who is now a city councilor for Staten Island, used to be the overnight guy on WABC in New York. Now it's Lionel, who does a wonderful job. I really think he does a great job. Lionel, it does the overnight job. But Frank Morano said that he actually became Episcopalian because he would finish his show as a Catholic and go to the Catholic church that was near the studios, whatever station, I don't know if it was WABC, but it was at some station at the time. And the Episcopal church across the street had coffee and donuts after Mass. And that helped him to really be part of a community. And he ended up leaving the Catholic church and going to the Episcopal church and having a lot to do with they had coffee and donuts after Mass. It builds community. You want to build community, and that's one of the things that we're in the church supposed to do, which is why I get frustrated when people say, well, now we got to lobby Congress. Lobby Congress all you want, but you really have to find the solution that is within what you do. And that's the reality. That's why when certain bishops turn around and say, we have to lobby Congress, I'm like, do you really understand that your job is literally teaching people how not to kill? That is literally your job. And that's why I get frustrated when people start talking about gun control legislation. Should we have gun control legislation? Well, leave that up to Congress. But what we really need is something I've followed all along. Gandhi said if Christians lived their religion, there wouldn't be a Hindu in India. And I always say if Christians lived their religion, there wouldn't be a gang member in the United States. I also add is a weapon, let's see, no, I can't remember how I worded it. A gun is useless in the hands of someone whose heart is changed. And that's our job. That's what we're called to do. But if you got these leaders of the church busy lobbying Congress and not realizing that they really should be teaching within their own church, they're going to miss the point. And they're going to lobby Congress. And I know I saw this tweet, but apparently it was taken down. Now we have to lobby. Now Congress, don't you think it's time for you to do legislation? Now, bishops, don't you think it's time to make sure there's a coffee and donuts in every single parish in the United States? Why don't you encourage that and build community and faith and see what happens? We'll be back right after this. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. So Monday, we begin another interview series. We're going to be talking to a Father Hofer from the Dominicans, talking about a great event that's happening down at the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C., right there on the campus of Catholic University of America, all about celebrating the Rosary. It's going to be a big event, September 27th, and we're going to be talking to him about that down at the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. And you can find their website as rosarypilgrimage.org. Rosary Pilgrimage obviously is one word. rosarypilgrimage.org. Check that out. We're going to be talking to him. He's all excited about it. He's really loves to talk about it. So it'll be fascinating. And as I told him, I could go on for hours with a Dominican. They are fascinating people to talk to. Anyway, we will be back on Monday. Have a blessed weekend.